Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Peter.
Episode 130, recorded on August 11th, 2021. The Cloud Pod has how many unattended Google projects? Good evening, Peter and Ryan.
Good evening.
We're unfortunately without Jonathan. He had some personal issues to address this evening, so that was a bummer. But always good to be here with you two near the end of the week now, so always good.
Definitely.
Well, it's been an interesting week in cloud once again. Up first is our friends or frenemies at Elasticsearch have decided to try to win the award for the worst open source project, or how to prove the open source naysayers right, if you will. And that they've done that with modifying the official Python client for Elasticsearch to not work with forked versions like OpenSearch and close the GitHub issue to comments. So not only did they make the change for an issue, they then didn't allow you to talk about it at all. One of the ones that they impacted this week was Elasticsearch-Pi, which has over 200,000 downloads and is described as an official low-level client for Elasticsearch, and is also heavily used in the Elasticsearch DSL, which you use for running the queries. If you pick up the change, which you might have done automatically if you're using package management, which now you're in a bad situation, you're trying to move to OpenSearch, it will now check if the database is Elasticsearch by checking the x-elastic-product HTTP header in the response, or if there isn't, it will raise the error and not function. There is a quote here in the pull request there's a quote here from one of the open source project called Invenio, saying, Lars Holm Nielsen says, "It's disappointing to see this. You're forcing us as bystanders in a battle to choose sides. We develop an open source product that could likely easily work with both Elasticsearch or OpenSearch, and then the users can choose for themselves if they want Elasticsearch or OpenSearch. This and other behaviors from Elastic really does not give me any confidence in Elastic and what you might do in the future. And don't blame it all on Amazon. You've already changed the server license. You didn't have to make this move too." And Philip Krauss from Elastic had to say, Amazon OpenSearch is a different product, and while there is some shared history, there are already many differences that cause real confusion and issues. And that is all they've said on the issue.
Well, I suppose it really doesn't matter because, like most of their open source offerings maintained by Elastic, they're not going to update it or respond to the issues filed on GitHub anyway. So,
right,
I was,
and they don't even answer their own support cases. So why would they answer the open source ones?
I spent the majority of this week debugging issues in the Logstash client, or the client that's open source, and it's my issue was there from 2018. Awesome.
Oof.
Yeah.
It's never good. We talked about when they were doing this with the .NET license or .NET client that, what are they going to do about beats long term? And so Amazon OpenSearch has actually announced a blog post this week as well in response to this. And their big drive is to keep OpenSearch compatible with Elastic. And so basically they're saying AWS says OpenSearch is, of course, a Apache 2 licensed product, and they want to make it easy to migrate existing clients, connectors, and low and high level APIs that will just work. And so Elasticsearch has started adding new logic to Java and Python APIs to redirect connections to OpenSearch clusters or to clusters running open source distribution of Elasticsearch 7, even the ones provided by Elastic prior to the closed source change, which that's dirty. While the client's library remains open source, they only allow apps to connect to their commercial offerings. And to give users a clear path forward, AWS is adding a new set of open source clients that will make it easy to connect applications to any OS or OpenSearch or Elasticsearch cluster. Clients will be derived from the last compatible version of corresponding Elastic maintained clients. And in the spirit of openness, they plan to make reasonable efforts to maintain compatibility with all Elasticsearch distributions, including those made by Elastic.co. Forked clients include the Elasticsearch-Pi, Java, .NET.js, Ruby, PHP, PS, Perl, Hadoop, and specification, as well as the Go, Elasticsearch, and Eland connectors. At this time, OpenSearch does not recommend updating to the latest version of any Elastic maintained client, as this may cause things to break. With the next few weeks, AWS will be opening repos for all of the new client libraries in the OpenSearch GitHub organization.
Yeah, I would be. They're making these changes because they're seeing things real time, some statistics, or they're getting some feedback from their sales team real time. And so that gives me very little confidence in Elastic as a company. There must be something going on in the back end because this is pretty dramatic.
How they've mishandled the situation where they've made Amazon look good, right? That's quite a challenge.
Yeah.
Amazon, they just easily position themselves in the market where Amazon can just come in and be the good guy by, look, we'll make it open source. That's cool. We'll do our own version then. We'll even make it work with your closed thing. That's awesome. It's just so easy. And so it's funny to me. It's just whoever, it's one thing to make a single mistake, but this is a pattern now.
Yeah, and people were originally attracted to Elasticsearch because it was an open source project. So this is taking away one of the main reasons they were able to acquire the users they did. See, I don't get the strategy unless it's like they're pulling a ripcord right now because they're bleeding.
I'm actually really curious to see how Elastic's earnings look. Not maybe this quarter, but next quarter.
Yeah.
Because I definitely feel like it's going to start impacting them some way. And I get why they thought they were on the right on this, but the way they're acting towards the community is really the big failure.
Yeah.
I think that's where it's going to hurt them long term. I think it causes them issues in the market long term, and that's just going to be a bad situation for them and their stock price at the end of the day.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, let's move on to AWS this week. Charlie Bell, who has been a veteran of AWS for 23 years and has run core services at AWS, including EC2, has decided to leave the company. This is the latest change in AWS executive team as Andy left to run Amazon CEO role. Peter DeSantis will be taking over Charlie Bell's role of head of utility computing services, and Prasad Kalyanaram, and I butchered that, apologies, will replace Peter DeSantis as head of networking and infrastructure services. Charlie joined Amazon in 1998 when it acquired his company Server Technologies Group, an e-commerce transaction company that he founded after leaving Oracle. Charlie's role was described in his LinkedIn as general manager of AWS services, including product definition, pricing, P&Ls, software development, and service operations. And Charlie also ran the most infamous weekly operations review process for AWS services. And if you talk to any developers about the weekly operations review, that's a trial by fire. They drill in on metrics. They want to know why your service isn't doing what it's supposed to do. And it's apparently a very effective meeting inside AWS to get action on services that are not performing at the way they expected them to. So Charlie Bell, I'm sure will be missed. I'm not sure if this is just a retirement play. Hey, he's been there a long time. He's probably nearing 70. It's time to retire, or if this is he's upset that he didn't get the CEO role. I'm not really sure.
I mean, just saying the words being anywhere pretty much, no less AWS, where they're so fast moving for 23 years, makes me tired.
Yeah. That's all I can think about. I'm like, man, that's a lot of very tired.
It's a lot of work, man. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he deserves a break.
Yeah.
Well, and think about the complexity he's seen, when they started out with S3 and EC2, and, we talked about VPCs a few weeks ago and how they grew up, and just, so much has changed since he's been there. Just, all of that happens over time.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's move to Autoscaling Groups. Another very old service is getting some new tricks this week, which are pretty cool, actually. So the first one is the new instance refresh, which now allows you to avoid replacing instances if those instances are already in the desired configuration. And they'd be in the desired configuration because you either canceled the upgrade halfway through or it failed. And so before this, you'd have to basically do a whole rollout of all 2,500 nodes, even if you already got through 2,499 of them, but then failed. This is very useful for an ASG refresh process for either rolling forward or rolling back. And thank you for this one. I do appreciate this one quite a bit. The next one I'm also very excited about. So one of the challenges of a launch template was that you had to basically specify the new launch template and then do your instance refresh. And if that instance refresh and launch template were failing, you now just failed your entire cluster.
Oof.
So now you can support updating the launch template upon successful completion of an instance refresh. So basically it doesn't actually take effect until the refresh is completed and works, which is fantastic. Really appreciate this one. And then they've also given you 4 new Amazon EventBridge event notifications to tug into Lambda or any other functionality you want to know for instance changing. Those are instance refresh has started, succeeded, failed, or been canceled. All great statuses that you need to know if you're doing instance refresh operations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, the events are super handy for anything who's trying to manage a large, clustered or group of servers and needing to run a thing to update instance metadata or update a database of your nodes or whatever you're doing. So that's clearly they're listening to their customers and making autoscaling groups much easier than they used to be. It's awesome.
Very much needed.
Yep.
Another well-needed feature, if you've had any experience with AWS WAF rules for any amount of time, you know that the vendors, if you're using the managed ones, will update them quite often, and sometimes without your knowledge. And so now they're giving the ability to version your managed rules so that you are able to control which rules are applied. You can then test them maybe on a small test pilot of your user population, or roll back to a previously tested version that works. As well as when you use a version managed rule group, you can control when the new rule updates are applied to your traffic in your control. Another nice thing they did with this one is you also have the ability to subscribe to updates via SNS to a managed rule. So as the vendor stages their updates to the rules, you'll get an SNS notification, which you can then plumb into Slack or into email or ticketing system, however you want to connect your SNS to your systems to make you aware that things are going to be changing. And so you're ahead of it. So you can actually maybe put that manual version in place before an update you're not excited about comes through.
Yeah, and imagine you could even use that just to drive CI on the new rule set.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Just immediately roll it out and, have it test in like a lower environment or like a subset for sure.
Yeah, that's cool. And those rules can definitely, everybody wants those up to date, but it sucks when a rule like that accidentally breaks your app when they update it.
Yeah, it's never good when that happens.
It's just so hard to find, right? Like it's one of those things it's really difficult, and it could be for any number of reasons. It could be, the security team is updating a rule. And if you don't have the ability to easily roll back to a known config, your operational storage got a whole lot nightmarish.
Yeah. And our last Amazon story for the week, CloudWatch Synthetics now supports visual monitoring. And this is not what you maybe think is just a dashboard in the console where you get to see that your CloudWatch Synthetics are failing. No, this is actually looking at your web page and comparing it to a baseline. And if that baseline actually exceeds a certain level, it'll alert you that has changed. So maybe if you you push an update to your code out that then moved a box that shouldn't have got moved, you now get alerted to that, ideally. The visual monitoring compares screenshots taken during a Canary run with a baseline for the visual discrepancy, allowing you to view those differences quickly. And this is all powered by ImageMagick, one of the best open source toolkits out there for image manipulation. And there's also lots of great use cases for this around QA, as well as just standardized monitoring, because your website might work, but might not display correctly, which is definitely one use case. But also QA, like, are you expecting that image to move? Was that something you really wanted to do? I don't know, one way or the other. My only complaint about this one right now is that there's no way to take the baseline and say, hey, this section of the screen, which is dynamic content, I want you to ignore that, which would be my only complaint about this right now. And hopefully that comes sometime in the future where we'll be actually able to say this part of the page, just ignore it. But the rest of the page we care about. And if it's not looking right, please alert me.
I would immediately set up a static page that used all my CSS divs with the same template just to check the divs. Because it always mess up the divs. And then you're like, what happened to my entire website?
Yeah, I had a joke all lined up about, CloudWatch Synthetics is just, maturing up so it can, turn the monitoring dashboard bleeding red. But then, learning more about this, you realize that how cool this is. And since, I can think of just a number of use cases before production, and then, when maintaining an app in production, like that's a really good way to monitor for changes and defects. Very cool.
Well, moving on to Google, I actually have a crossover story. Google has a new histogram feature in cloud logging to troubleshoot faster, which uses colors to basically tell you things. So we'll talk about that in a second. But you actually could use this AWS Canary to monitor the histogram, and if the histogram is going in the wrong direction color-wise, you could alert on that. I just thought of it.
Rube Goldberg of monitoring. Yeah.
Love it. Run synthetics on your dashboard.
Yeah. And then if that histogram was using, your Azure billing data that it's sucking into BigQuery, this is all, you could have this thing loop around multiple times. Like we could go cloud to cloud. But for those of you in the GCP space who are interested in cloud logging, we'll talk about histograms now. What was that, Peter?
You're actually going to automate eyes on glass is what you're going to do.
through multiple clouds. So I'll have Google's SRE, look on my AWS thing, look at my Azure thing. It's great. Fantastic.
That's so great.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, this is a brilliant idea. This is billions of dollars right here. How to use Google to do all your SRE needs on all your other clouds. Well, Google has this new feature for you in cloud logging called histograms. They've had them for a little while, but they've added some new features to make them even more valuable than before. The first one is histogram colors, which makes it easier to view the breakdown of logs by severity by color. This allows you to easily spot an increased number of error events, for example, which, having looked at a lot of Kibana dashboards, not this week like Ryan has, they're normally one color. And so it is hard. Like, yes, the volume looks higher, but you don't know if the volume is infos or it's errors. So I actually kind of like this one. I see why this is valuable. And then they also now give you the new pan left, right to scroll through time, allowing you to time warp just by pushing a single arrow button on the left or right-hand side of this histogram, taking you right before the event spike. Because, those spikes always happen right at the beginning of your time series. You're like, 11:01 it started, but what it caused it, I don't know. Now you can hit the arrow and you can figure that out. You can now zoom in or out on the time series, so you can zoom into the second, or you can zoom out to multiple days, weeks, months, whatever. As well as now, if you see a spike, you can just double click on that directly and run right to it with the scroll to time feature, all available to you in the histograms. Which is all these features seem pretty basic to me from a reporting perspective, but if they weren't there before and now they are, I could see why this is much more needed fast.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I have spent a lot of time looking at logs and dashboards this week, unfortunately, not for good reasons. And, so this is hitting me at just the right time. And, there's nothing more complicated or awkward than adjusting your time series. I don't know if it's like a common React library or module, but the little calendar thing where you click on one and it populates the field, but it never gets the end date correctly. So you got to redo it and then it airs out the whole thing. I would much rather just hit a button and go over to the left a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
Just want to go that way.
Oh, the data I need isn't in this time series. Let me go rerun my Athena query that now is going to have to add 5 minutes, and then 20 minutes later my Athena query returns, and you're like, great, didn't go back for So I appreciate this. I'm down with this.
Yeah.
Cool.
Google has also released Private Service Connect now in general availability. For those of you familiar with AWS parlance, these are VPC private endpoints now available to you inside of Google. With Private Service Connect, Google has adopted a service-centric approach to their network, and Private Service Connect allows you to create private and secure connections from your cloud network to services like cloud storage or Bigtable and third-party services like Elastic, Mongo, and Snowflake. These service endpoints in your VPC provide private connectivity and policy enforcement all through an internet or IEN attachment. This avoids the need to negotiate IP address boxes, mutually agree on policies, or set up those pesky VPNs, which is all good. And since we already gave Elastic enough time today, I have a quote from MongoDB, the other terrible open source company. And MongoDB's partnership with Google is an integral part of our strategy to support modern apps and mission-critical databases and to become a cloud data company. Private Service Connect allows our customers to connect to MongoDB Atlas on Google Cloud seamlessly and securely, and we're excited for customers to have this additional and important capability. Andrew Davidson, VP of Cloud Product at MongoDB.
Yeah, a lot of companies are moving their services into the cloud, and a lot of security engineers are restricting outbound access or tightly controlling egress, and so that's these things have to happen. These things are absolutely needed to keep them secure and allow those companies to just sell their services.
It's a good catch-up feature. Yeah, good catch-up feature.
It is a great catch-up feature. Speaking of another catch-up feature, GKE has added some new capabilities. And because GKE is Kubernetes, you, of course, would want to then know where those Kubernetes pods and services are running. And you do that typically with Service Discovery. And Google, a few months back, released Service Directory, a managed product that allows you to maintain an inventory of services in one place. To use this, though, in the past, you had to set up orchestration code, which who wants to write YAML orchestration code? To register your products and services inside of the service directory. And so Google's got your back this week with the ability to automatically register and unregister your GKE cluster in the service directory without having to write orchestration code. That's because you just had to specify some parameters in a YAML file still, but this is not you orchestrating yourself. So it still requires some writing, not a lot. In service directory, services can advertise themselves to other services with both GKE and elsewhere. And as we talked about in the launch of service directory, it's tightly integrated into Cloud DNS, making it easy to access all of your services through a simple DNS name that are all auto-published automatically into the service directory, which is great.
Yeah, there's a huge pattern of people deploying too many services onto a single cluster just so that you can easier manage the service discovery aspect of those components. And so this is a good way to alleviate that pain where you can sort of have a more sane sort of split of services on a cluster. And so this is nice.
Well, and since Google charges you for every GKE cluster you set up after the first one, this is a great way to get more money.
Mm-hmm.
Well done, Google.
Yeah.
But if you are looking to save money and you have some proliferation of projects, which this is the anti-pattern of AWS accounts that I hadn't thought about before until today. So in, of course, AWS parlance, because you have to set up a whole VPC and a whole network and a whole account, and you need a credit card, it's a bit difficult to set up an AWS account. And so a lot of companies have that all done by a centralized team. But in the world of Google, creating a project is very, very simple. And so that may lead to a situation where you have a lot of cloud resources including entire projects that have been forgotten. So sad. Not only can such unintended resources be difficult to identify, but they also tend to create a lot of headaches for product teams down the road, including unnecessary waste and security risks.
Does Google forget about them? Does Google forget to charge you? Does Google forget to charge you for them?
No, they remember to charge you. They do not forget to charge you. I guarantee it. But no, this is probably how they killed by Google works. They just, their projects that are not doing enough work or not making enough revenue, they just kill them. So that's but to help you prune your idle cloud resources, Google is giving you Unattended Project Recommender, a new feature of Active Assist that provides you with a one-stop shop for discovering, reclaiming, and shutting down unattended projects. With actionable and automatic recommendations, you no longer have to worry about wasting money or mitigating security risks presented by your idle resources. Using ML, which of course it does, it identifies with a high degree of confidence projects that are likely abandoned based on an API and network activity, billing, usage of cloud services, and other signals. And there's a quote here from Adeline Villette, Cloud Security Officer at Decathlon, which is a French sporting goods retailer. After a thorough test of this feature and the validation of our CISO, we ended up deleting our first 775 projects, and no one complained. A great help to improve our security. The next step for us will be to operationalize it at scale and implement a company-wide policy for unattended resource management.
Wow, 775 project deletion isn't at scale.
Yeah, I was like, that's not scale for you guys? You're a sports retailer in France. Like, how many projects do you need?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I have a new hobby every 6 months, and that starts to add up fast. So, like, I can see it. Yeah, makes sense.
I can see just my bad, API code just doing a loop and causing 775 projects from being spun up. So, there's lots of ways you could do this. I could understand how it could happen. But yeah, I guess I just, the fact that this is a problem for Google and probably for Azure too, it's not something I thought about before. Where Amazon account sprawl is a problem, but it's not typically. So I don't know of anybody who has 775 AWS projects. I'm sure there's somebody.
What? Oh no, 700 accounts. I don't think that's all that unreasonable.
I think it's unreasonable. But it's a very small percentage of AWS customers.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's time to market too. As it used to be sort of a 1 mega account to rule them all. But yeah, compare this to closing down an AWS account where you have to sacrifice your firstborn and it has to be during solstice. This is awesome that you can just sort of, it's recommending it, that you shut it down, but then it's a one-click action. And then all of a sudden you saved a bunch of money, which is, very anti-Amazon, which I still think I'm paying for NAT gateways and accounts places that I don't know.
Yeah, and when I just look at the model around a project is isolated from an API standpoint, but can be on the same network as other projects, and you can create them and delete them very easily. I love that model. That's the one piece of AWS that drives me nuts.
Yeah, 100%.
Hey everyone, Jonathan here. I just wanted to take a minute to thank the cloud consulting gurus at Foghorn for helping make the Cloud Pod possible. These folks truly get it. Cloud consulting experts since 2008, they are premier tier partners with AWS, Google Cloud Platform Silver, and Microsoft Azure partners. From multi-cloud to containers to moving full production workloads to the cloud under the tightest compliance, Foghorn's team of full-stack cloud engineers have been there, done that, gotten the t-shirt, and are ready to share their experience with you. If you're in the market for some talent to supplement your team, visit www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. Foghorn, the promise of cloud delivered.
You can now troubleshoot your GKE apps faster with monitoring data and cloud logging. Making it easy to get GKE apps troubleshooted is always difficult, especially with contextual cloud monitoring data accessible right from cloud logging. And with this new capability, you can easily see the relevant pod, node, and cluster events, metrics, alerts, and SLOs right from the log line itself in GKE. Additionally, the data loaded for a specific log entry is scoped to the Kubernetes resource, which saves you valuable time while investigating an app error. Now, whether you start troubleshooting with monitoring, logging, or GKE, like in this example, you have the observability data at your fingertips from Google, which I do appreciate that they're giving you 3 different ways to get to the same amount of data, depending on what your context is. Because there's people who understand the app side, they understand the logs. Then there's people who understand the system side from a monitoring and API performance perspective. They're looking at the monitoring data. And then there's people who just understand Kubernetes. And so giving them the ability to jump from their context directly into the data is super valuable.
Yeah.
I think I'd need to use this like hands-on to kind of understand it, because when I read through this, it just feels like it's dimensions, and so it's the existing data, the same data is just now dimensioned by more artifacts, and so like when I read through this, I don't see it as a giant advantage. It's nice, it's a convenience.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about context and where you're coming from. It is the same data, but it's the data from the context you understand. I think that's important.
When I'm debugging an app, it's like Neo in the Matrix. I just see it unfold,
you see it all.
and it comes in green things from the sky, and
you see the code streaming across your screen.
Maybe I just don't need this.
Maybe I think there are people who do.
Yeah. Oh, my application's still very broken. Just by the way, I haven't fixed anything.
I'm sure for teams who break out the app team versus the platform team, it just makes it super easy to create dashboards and other things for different specific groups, so they can just see what they need to see.
Yeah. And being able to quickly tie a log to a Kubernetes node is helpful too, because it can be kind of a nightmare trying to you have to figure out which pod is not working properly, which node. That's kind of terrible. So there's definitely value here. Well, moving on to Azure with its questionable value.
Zing!
Sorry, Zing.
That wasn't me, Microsoft. That was Justin.
No, they have value. I'm just annoyed by them this week. That's all. There are several new Azure automation improvements coming, which is a weird way to announce something. So they're not in preview, they're not beta, they're coming, and so they're going to tell you about them, which is great. And for those of you who are like, "What's Azure automation?" I'll tell you. It's a cloud-based automation and configuration service that supports consistent management across your Azure and non-Azure environments, and it's comprised of several components. Process automation, which allows you to orchestrate using a graphical or PowerShell and/or a Python runbook. Configuration management to let you collect inventory, track changes, configure desired state. Update management to assess your compliance with patching and schedule updates, installation of patches. And then several shared capabilities like RBAC, global store of variables, credentials, certificates, and connections, and as well as flexible scheduling, etc. And is heterogeneous for Windows and Linux, as well as Azure or on-premise, or I imagine it'll probably work in another cloud. So I can summarize that down to you as SSM for Azure.
I was just going to say.
With a much better name, though. So that's a good thing. Some common scenarios you may use automations for are to write runbooks, configure your VMs, retrieve your inventory, monitor your systems, and govern them, as we all like to do. Bind them together. So the new things that are coming to Azure automation that you might be excited about, first up is Azure AD support, which allows you to add Azure AD as an auth source and remove dependencies on certificates, and enables you to meet your stringent audit and compliance needs and not use local authentication. Which is that Azure had the audacity to publish a product like this that doesn't use AD. It blows my mind. Local auth was their default launch model for this. That just is crazy to me. But it's coming. So if you looked at Azure automation, we're like, I can't use that because it doesn't use AD, or certificates are hard in Windows, which they are. This is coming for you, which I'm sure you'll be happy about. The next one is a new hybrid worker extension for allowing you to customize your agents, which is basically means you can add easy ways to onboard Azure and non-Azure machines without all the pesky manual work they had for you to do, as well as provides you governance at scale through policies and templates across your workers. And it looks like you can also specify something like, hey, not only do we need to have this agent on here, we also need to have Azure logging and Azure monitoring and those sort of things. You can specify all of those things through the hybrid worker extension. Support for PowerShell 7.1 is in development, enabling development and execution of runbooks, which, who would have thought that Microsoft would support PowerShell and a new version of it. And then my favorite announcement of all of them, Azure support for high availability, offering for Azure automation, enabling will get you higher reliability and resiliency to handle zone-wide outages of your runbooks and other configurations, which I love paying for a managed service that I then have to make highly available and resilient on my own. I always appreciate that.
Yeah, that's not cool. I don't like that.
Right. I mean, I think it's because the execution happens off of servers that you run in your VPC, but that's not well explained in this, this blog post.
I'm sure there's a good reason for it. I'm sure it's isolation, from other customers, and there's things. But yeah, you do sort of want to handle those types of things. You do sort of want like the service to handle that.
Yeah, but for people who are running right today a bunch of stuff on Azure and can super benefit from these features, I probably bet they don't want to wait for automated high availability before they get access to all the rest. So I got to go with release early and often and side with Microsoft.
I will agree with you there. I would roll this out even in without the multi-region support, just because the automation that it powers has way more benefit than the risk of a giant outage, preventing me from, temporarily being able to audit my machines, temporarily being able to work as deployments. I think that's a good point.
All right, let's move on beyond Azure automation, which is always fun. Again, PowerShell 7.1 support, Ryan. I know you're super jazzed about that.
I have PowerShell installed. I know how to write in it. I use it every once in a while, only when I have to. Granted, but
do you mix it with NuGet?
If I was actually developing software that I needed to package up, I would most likely it would be binary package up with NuGet that I then managed using PowerShell. But I don't use any of those tools.
Do you use a SoftG NuGet?
NuGet?
Not NuGet. NuGet.
NuGet.
NuGet. I'm thinking like Baby Ruth.
I have to stop myself from saying nugget for some reason. I always want to pronounce it as nugget.
That one's a tough one. I don't. It's not my favorite naming of a service.
NuGet. It's so perfect.
NuGet, but the problem is new to me, which I don't think is a GNU. It's not how it's spelled, but it's also very tightly tied to Linux. And so it's like, why are you calling it NuGet, which causes a confusion? Other than Steve Ballmer, that's the answer for all this. I don't know why I questioned it.
I thought it was kind of like a cool way of spelling NEW.
Maybe.
I thought it had. I mean, that was clearly the context, but I thought it had another Windows like N sort of tie-in as well. But I don't know.
I just tie it to Baby Ruth directly and NuGet.
I'm just really happy that they can, didn't they continue the sort of joke or the theme with chocolatey and nougat and
exactly that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. I always like that. Like I've always really liked Chef, and they're taking the blanking on the word right now, but the Chef and Knife and Cookbook and and so nougat and chocolatey, like same thing, and I love it. I'm here for that. Things should be more fun.
Yeah, so yes. I'm doing real-time follow-up here on the Wikipedia page. So NuGet, which is pronounced NuGet, as Peter mentioned, is apparently a package manager designed to enable developers to share reusable code, which you guys already knew. The Outer Curve Foundation initially created under the name NuPack in 2010, and since introduction in 2010, NuGet has evolved into a larger ecosystem, and Microsoft now owns it, which is interesting. And then another product which I've heard of but didn't know it was connected to NuGet is Chocolatey, which is the Windows package manager installer, which is made by Chocolatey Software, which is a command line interface to actually get to your NuGet packages, which I had not realized was all tied together. So there you go.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I've used all of it with PowerShell for bootstrapping Windows boxes.
Mm-hmm. No, I've introduced lots of automation to system administrators who wanted nothing to do with both those two.
Yeah. It says here the chocolatey name is an extension of a pun of nougat because everyone loves chocolatey nougat.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Baby Ruth.
All right, let's get this out of the rat hole. Let's move back on.
Let's stay for a little while. Let's wade in the warm water we've created.
Move on to crepes and flan or something like whatever. For listeners of the Cloud Pod, you know that I have no love for Microsoft Active Directory, which is why I'm excited to tell you about the leading cloud directory platform, JumpCloud. JumpCloud makes it easy to solve today's IT challenges by unifying device and user management through a single pane of glass, enabling you to securely manage your users and devices and perform common tasks like onboarding and offboarding remote workers. With JumpCloud, you no longer need to implement an on-premise Active Directory infrastructure or additional tooling to scope a user's access, and you can ensure that the user is coming from trusted devices and networks. Enabling JumpCloud's zero-trust solutions improves the security and compliance of your network, ensuring users have access only to the services they need when they need them. To start your organization's move to a modern, secure hybrid work model, try JumpCloud for free today at cloud.jumpcloud.com/thecloudpod. That's cloud.jumpcloud.com/thecloudpod. All right, well, Azure this week is introducing global disaster recovery for you via Azure Site Recovery, which is, of course, an automatic way to manage your applications and make them recover in different regions. For those of you who are like, hey, they've already had this forever, they did. You're 1,000% correct. But apparently, it did not support crossing intercontinental regions. So it would work between multiple US regions, which is probably why Azure has 8 of them, as well as if you're in Japan, there's multiple regions. It's great, which was great until they had regions where they only had one data center, which then caused problems. So then in 2020, they gave you zone-to-zone DR, which allows you to address an in-region DR need. And then for the companies that needed a true region-to-region across intercontinental boundaries, they now give you today global disaster recovery, Azure Site Recovery, all supported by Azure's Backbone Network, and you can fail over at any time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think we talked about that in the announcement of, I guess it was probably the 2020 region-to-region ability. Like it was limited, but it was still a giant improvement over not being able to fail over. And so this is just a continuation of that.
Yeah, but I thought they were going from a very broad angle, like region to region, cross country, cross intercontinental. Then they went region inside, and then but no, it's actually going the other way, which is kind of the weird part. But hey, here we go.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that is it for new news this week. Peter, I will let you take on the lightning round.
All right. Let's start with AWS Cloud 9. Introduces new features to browse CloudWatch logs, S3, and use EC2 instance profiles.
Isn't Cloud 9 an IDE? What does that have to do with any of those?
So the developers, it's all about the new hotness, and the developers don't like context shifting. So you want to keep all your development tasks. So I just wrote this code and it doesn't work. I want to look at the logs all in one place. And I make fun of that, except for I'm slowly becoming a convert of it because it's really awesome.
And then you need the EC2 instance profiles, right? So you automatically have access to those resources, right?
You're managing the permissions using that profile. Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. We are also announcing Amazon CloudWatch cross-account alarms.
So I can set up the alarms all to go to one account and then I ignore them. Awesome.
Funny enough, I thought it the other way around. I was like, this is how security is going to harass me now. They're going to have all the accounts send it directly to my pager.
Oh! Horrendous. I love that you said pager. Do you really have a pager?
I mean, pager duty. I mean,
like your
same thing.
Yes.
I don't have a pager.
Right.
Who has those in it?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's standing. The term is going to stand the test of time now. So great.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Moving on, AWS Systems Manager Ops Center launches operational insights to identify duplicate items and event sources with unusual activity.
This is for when that one alarm that shows up and then turns into 7 alarms, and turns into 27 alarms, turns into a lot more alarms. Finally, it's just the one thing that went wrong. I changed the security group. Yeah.
This is how I'm going to fix the issue I just mentioned about security paging me. I'm just going to send them through this to identify the duplicate pages from security and then back to it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. I like it. And then Justin would really like me to read that one again because he stuck it in the notes twice, but I'm not going to. Not going to fall for it.
I was just trying to give you a joke because when the jokes write themselves, I'm like, this one writes itself. I can give this to Peter and he's going to love it. I was just trying to help you out.
Oh, I get it because it's duplicate items.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to do it.
See, I thought he was trying to do an early angle for the lightning round point. I thought
I just thought Justin wanted to prove to the world that I don't read the notes before we start recording.
No, I mean we haven't messed with you in a long time.
It's like, no, we knew that. We've known that forever. It's not new.
Then my joke with him would have been like, and this is how Ops Center can help you identify duplicate items as you write it again. But I mean, you didn't go there, so it's fine. It's all good.
Sorry. Now, why don't we enable auto approval of change requests and expedite changes with AWS Systems Manager Change Manager?
So finally, auto approval of change requests, something I've been asking for since forever when I didn't really understand why we needed to approve things.
I mean, when you can work this into a workflow where you're managing risk, I guess this will make sense. But why even have the change request and the change approval if you're just going to auto approve it?
Yeah.
Robert, they should. If I get to name this product or this feature, I'm naming it Rubber Stamp.
It's a missed opportunity with that too. Yeah, this is terrible. Whoever is in charge of system manager and their product names needs to be held accountable. This is ridiculous.
Yes,
I mean it's Azure automation, right?
But with auto approval, which I love.
Auto approval. Yeah. What is the point?
Oh, because I can point this at a change management process. It does approval is the controls to state that you have a process. not how good it is. And so this
is... And the thing is if you do a change, if you're sophisticated in your change management, you can identify the risk of the change and certain risk thresholds or business as usual changes, you can just auto-approve those. Right. But most companies aren't that sophisticated. They just run these really laborious cabs that meet every day and review changes ad nauseum. The people in the cab have no idea about the change that the engineers are actually trying to make and has no ability to actually manage the risk or identify the problem.
And that's only if the steps in the change are accurate, which they're usually not. So, correct. I hate change processes and live and breathe them every day.
That's why I like change management when you move it left to be a part of your pull request.
Yes.
And like two people review it, that's my change approval process, and 2 people signed off on it, we're good to go.
It's so brilliant. And it's documented, and everything about that system is so perfect. Amazon RDS Proxy can now be created in a shared virtual private cloud, aka VPC.
I'm just sad that the shared virtual private cloud is not dead yet. They hadn't announced anything for it in a while, and I was like, yes, the shared virtual private cloud, they've realized is a terrible plan. And then they announced this, and I'm like, oh, you people.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great plan when it was like, aha, this is going to fix the problem with that Google solved by allowing multiple projects to join the same network. And then everyone who tried it said it doesn't work. So I didn't even investigate it.
Yeah, it's too limiting. It's
has some sharp edges.
Yeah, some really sharp edges that are one-way doors. And, the reality is just you're not really sharing the network. You're carving out pieces and delegating responsibility of the network. But stuff still can't talk to other stuff necessarily and without heavy orchestration. So what's the point?
Yeah, poo-poo. Yeah, no good. Athena can now write query results in Parquet, Avro, ORC, and JSON formats.
Peter, I'm going to need you to roll for Constitution, please. Constitution check.
I don't get it.
It's a D&D check.
Yeah.
Oh!
Yeah. The nerds get it. I'm in.
I remember, but I was young when I had to play D&D. I was like 10 years old. And then the older kids they would pretend like they're rolling to see who the bad guy, the monster attacks, but it would always be me. Because then I would get upset and cry, and they would laugh at watching me cry when my guy died. It was a very traumatic experience, actually.
I think we're having a breakthrough.
On today's edition of Younger Child Syndrome.
Exactly. Blame my CEO for that.
Yeah. Even the words had to play D&D. Yeah. I love it.
I mean, now that I know that D&D is some regress pain there,
yeah.
I regret the joke.
Now we're gonna have to. Now we're just gonna have to get together and play D&D.
Although my favorite was that we found the best use. The little characters, the little characters over there,
little figurines. Yeah,
the best way to carry those around was in the bag that Crown Royal bottles come in. So you see kids just walking around with a Crown Royal bag. It's great.
Nice. Yeah. Those were great bags.
They were. I still have a few actually.
Yeah, they still sell them. Yeah. If you buy a bottle of Crown Royal, you still get that purple bag.
That's awesome.
People would riot in the streets if that got ended.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a Canadian company, so they'll never end it because they're too nice.
Exactly.
All right, introducing 79 new resource types in the CloudFormation registry,
and the 79 more things I'll never look at.
Yep. Yeah. Never once.
Terraform for the win.
How about more announcements? Let's announce new AWS wavelength zones in Chicago, Houston, and Phoenix.
I mean, they announced that for Houston, huh? I guess that's for Reinforce.
Yeah. Or just, everywhere where it's like balls hot right now.
Yeah. Well, Chicago's not balls hot right now. I mean,
it's August. Yeah, it is.
It might be. Yeah.
It might be. It's more muggy there than anything.
Yeah.
Houston and Phoenix Phoenix, you're dying of the heat. Houston, you're dying of the humidity. Mm-hmm. Chicago, you're dying of the bugs at this time of year.
All right. This one, by the way, is completely up in the air. Amazon S3 on Outposts now supports sharing across multiple accounts.
This is such a weird announcement because an Outpost in my data center now has to be shared across accounts for them to have S3 access. Outpost starts getting real complicated real quick. Mm-hmm. That's all I can tell here.
Well, you want your thousands of dollars of rack, but you want your compliance too. So you want that to be separate accounts and don't give the developers any access to it. It makes sense.
That sounds horrendous to me.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I'm not into it.
Yeah.
That's the end of the lightning round. Balls hot wins it.
Yes.
Nice. I told you it was close.
Ryan's coming back. Ryan's tied up with Jonathan.
That's right.
It means he's only 4 off of my pace. So.
Well, and if I keep sabotaging different elements of Jonathan's life so that he can't make the recording, this is a shoe in for win. Yeah.
Between that and crashing Justin's machine tonight, you're killing it.
Yeah, well, he got back a little sooner than I thought, so to work harder. You're gonna lose power next week.
Yeah, there you go. That D&D joke I thought was Slade. So bummed. I should have done some research in advance.
Didn't count on the childhood trauma.
Yeah, didn't count on that. And
that was a good one. Looking back, maybe I made the wrong choice, but it's too late now to turn back.
It's okay. No, well won by Ryan.
It's just my sense of humor is so like middle school. It's pathetic.
All right. Well, things are coming up once again here in the cloud space. But first, one thing is not coming up, and that is Reinforce 2021. So they released that new wavelength zone for Houston, and then apparently they canceled Reinforce. So unfortunately, that is all tied to COVID-19. Delta variant out there, the numbers just don't look good. Houston, of course, being Texas, means they don't care about vaccines or masks. And so I think Amazon made the wise choice to cancel that event. And so they are reinforced. They've just canceled it completely. They did already schedule, of course, the summit online on top of it. And so it makes you kind of think maybe they already thought this might be what they'd have to do. I also don't know what demand was for the event. Because for all you guys know, I wasn't going because it's in August in Houston and I don't go there. But if you did buy a ticket, you will be issued a full refund of your registration fees via your original payment method within the next 5 business days. So you've already got an email from Amazon letting you know this, so I'm not surprising you. But if you were thinking about going to Reinforce, I'm sorry, too late.
Yeah, they had to.
Yeah, I think they had to too. I think reInvent's now at risk too.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah, for sure. I mean, as well as it should be. Like the numbers don't look good, especially
Can you imagine being in that crowd for 40 minutes trying to get out of the keynote shoulder to shoulder with 5,000 people? I mean, yeah.
Or go to the replay party and be in those tents with those people. Yeah, there's so many things that aren't great about it. So, this I think is just the beginning of a bunch of cancellations for fall conferences. Mm-hmm. I think that may be coming down the pipe. Google Cloud Next, we already said, went virtual, of course, October 12th and 14th. Mm-hmm. And then, so, if you were excited about Reinforce, I'm sure those announcements are getting swung over to the AWS Summit online. We will do productions, I've decided, since this is we haven't done it in a while. So next week, we're recording predictions for that. So your homework.
I'm so terrible at these. Okay.
I know.
Layer 7 egress. Oh, wait. Can't do that one this time.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it'll be great stuff. But yeah, next week we'll record that and get that out hopefully before the conference, or right around the same time the conference drops. But if you're looking for other events to do, the State of FinOps update is coming up here August 19th. That is going to be next week when this episode drops, or right after this episode drops. And I'll be dealing with data transfers, adopting the FinOps, getting organizational buy-in, and waste reduction for mountains versus molehills, borrowing from Joseph Daly's post, which sounds quite interesting. The event starts at 7:30 a.m. for networking and icebreakers, and wraps up by 10:30 a.m. After the keynotes and the panels. As well, it is on August 20th, it will be the second annual International FinOps Day, which was declared by the foundation itself that they were going to have FinOps Day. So, second one. It's good for them. I appreciate it. Apparently, they have over 4,000 active practitioners now in the FinOps community, which we are part of here at the CloudPod. At least all of us are, I think. And so, we will be there probably on August 19th, checking out some of these conference topics, as are always good every month. And then, of course, we have Google Cloud Next, which we mentioned. SNCConf coming up October 5th through the 7th, which is virtual for all your security people, or SnakeConf, or however we still haven't figured out how to call it yet. And then, of course, KubeCon is coming up October 11th through the 15th, followed the following week by HashiConf October 19th and 22nd. All virtual, of course, for those, which means they're free, which is always the best way to go to a conference, in my opinion. And then September 2nd is AWS Storage Day, which I'm sure they'll announce all kinds of amazing awesomeness for S3, EBS, and all the other storage capabilities at AWS available for you. And that is it for the Week in Cloud. Have a great week, you guys.
Take it easy.
Bye, everybody.
And that is the Week in the Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Foghorn Consulting and JumpCloud. Check out our website, the home of the CloudPod, where you can join our newsletter, Slack team, and send feedback or ask questions at thecloudpod.net, or tweet us with the hashtag #thecloudpod.